Welcome back to Here for the Common Game. Today, in deck number 830, we have Florian, Voldaren, Scion. So for 3 mana, we had a 3/3 first strike, which would have been good enough back in the day. But at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, so after you attack, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the total amount of life your opponent's lost this turn. That could potentially be a bunch. Exile one of those cards, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may play the exiled card. This, if done correctly, is almost tutoring. If you can deal 5 or 6 damage, it may not be tutoring. It's really heavy card selection. And you exile it, so you're not, you are looking at the top, so you're not penalized for searching. If players can't search libraries, or if they take 10 or whatever, or somebody chooses to wait, no, you're not searching your library. But I really like this, so I was focused on as many cards as I could do to damage everyone. So let's get into that. Let's just skip straight to the main category, shall we? Cards that damage all our opponents. Things like Pulse Tracker. It's a 1-mana 1/1, but it gets the bonus of when it attacks, everybody loses 1. Or each opponent loses 1. So, if you're playing in a standard 4-player pod, this is going to deal 4 damage before your commander checks, right? Because it deals 1 to each of your 3 opponents, and then 1 when it hits. Creeping Chill. Wow. 3 damage to each opponent, and you gain 3 life. What is that, 369? Yeah. Flame Rift. Just good old-fashioned Flame Rift. I'll take the 4, and I'll look at the top 12 of my library with my commander. Skull Rend. I know it's expensive, but 2 damage to each opponent, and then they discard 2 cards. This may be the first deck where I thought this was a good deal. Grave Consequences. This is just a weird card nobody plays with. Each player may remove any number of cards from their yard to the game, then they lose 1 life for each card in their graveyard, and you get to draw a card. So, way back then, in the Judgment era, they printed a bunch of cards that let your opponent make choices. Typically, those are bad. With this particular deck, though, it's kind of win-win, right? Grave Consequences. Either you're getting rid of their yard, or they're taking damage. And then this is drawing you cards. So, the other ones, though, the red ones, Blazing Salvo. Now, I know that these are not damage to everybody, but Blazing Salvo deals 3 damage to target creature, not player, unless that creature's controller has this deal 5 to them. So, yeah, that's a heck of a choice for them to make, right? That's the 1-drop. The 2-drop is Book Burning. Unless a player has Book Burning deal 6 damage to them, you mill 6. Done at the correct time when somebody has tutored and whatnot, it's probably better than... Now, Browbeat. Browbeat is not really conducive that well to Commander. However, all of these cards, if they choose to take the damage, then that makes your Commander dig that much deeper. So, yeah, it is literally win-win. Both of the scenarios we have positive outcomes in. But the big one, Dwarven Driller, I know 4 mana for a 2/2, but destroy target land unless its controller has this deal 2 damage to it. They're gonna take the 2. It's gonna happen. Unless they're at 2 life, nobody wants their lands destroyed. So, anyway, back to the mass damage, right? We have the Night Market Lookout. Same thing. Each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. When it just becomes tapped, even. Lull Subordinate. At the beginning of combat, before your commander checks, if you control your commander, each opponent loses 3. Now, I play in some big games, so Florian could potentially check 15, 20 cards a turn. Acidic Soil. I love this card. I have found that I have put Acidic Soil in several decks. This is that young Urza. 1 damage to each player for each land they control. This helps keeps that green ramp deck in check. Oh my god, if I was playing Azusa, this would kill me. Siphon Soul. I mean, it's always been okay, but in this deck, it's really good. Mardu Shadow Spear, same thing. It attacks, each opponent loses 1. Spear Spewer. Tap, deals a damage to each player. Now, that's a big one. It's not quite the Thermal Alchemist, dealing 1 damage to each opponent, and then when you cast an instant or sorcery, you get to untap it, but it's pretty good. Stormfist Crusader. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card and loses a life. I'm here for you. Just trying to help. Group hug. Yeah, that's what it is. Stronghold Discipline. Do we know that token player, or that player that just sits over in the corner and turtles up and doesn't attack? Jeremy. And this can do some serious damage to that player. Now, it doesn't get played a lot because by the time that somebody has enough for this to matter, somebody's generally board wiping, but there are situations. Bond of Agony. Yeah, you can just make this big. Limdul's Hex. This is kind of weird. Now, this deck was played, I believe my good buddy Derek played this deck. He actually played Limdul's Hex, and it was threatening enough where Limdul's Hex drew a removal spell. Deals 1 damage to each player. Of course, they can pay a black or 3 to prevent it. But that's during your upkeep. It just happens. It's a 2-mana enchantment, and that's 3 more, or in that game it would have been 5 more damage. Sizzle. 3 damage to each opponent. Gutter Snipe. You cast an instant or sorcery, it's going to deal 2 damage to each opponent, in addition to whatever the instant or sorcery is doing. Spy Flame Witch, just there again, you got the mana, you can make it happen. Rakdos Charm, of course, I put that in this category because of the last choice there, dealing 1 damage to its controller. Chandra Nalar, OG Chandra, that's right. 1 damage to a player, X damage to a creature, and then it's not hard to get Chandra up to the 8 because, quite frankly, nobody really cares that much about Chandra. I mean, they really don't. She's not the most threatening planeswalker there is, but 10 damage to target player and all their stuff, well, you're going to be looking at 10 cards. And then I almost didn't want to put Gary in the deck, but it does deal damage to each, or loses life. Each opponent loses life. But like there again, even if it's just a 2 from him, it's not bad. Anyway, with all of that in mind, let's keep going. Let's look at our ramp, shall we? We have the Commander Sphere, Rakdos Signet, Locket, and Cluestone, Explorer Scope, Spectral Searchlight, some Rituals and Seething Song, and Mana Geyser that I can't appreciate enough. I love that card. Card Draw, Midnight Reaper, Grim Haruspex, Crushing Disappointment. Now, this is not bad either. It fits both categories there. Each player loses 2 life and you draw 2 cards. Normally, I wouldn't have given this card the time of day at 4 mana, but it kind of helps your commander do its thing. Blood Pact. And then I have some things like, I have 5 Monarch cards here. You become the Monarch. I kind of consider that card draw, because you've got the Thorn of the Black Rose, the Crimson Fleet Commodore, Feast of Succession. But then I have the Court of Ire. If you're the Monarch, things get really interesting. 7 damage to that player permanent instead. And that's just an upkeep trigger. And you're drawing a card at the end of your turn. Court of Ambition, 6 life and 2 cards if you're the Monarch. Wow. So let's look at our other category, shall we? With all this damage being dealt, Rakdos, Lord of Riots, seems to be the perfect card. Your creature's costing less, and it's not like we're going to have problems casting it itself. Blood Oath, I was on a weird card kick, You know if somebody's got a ton of creatures or lands or whatever, because occasionally somebody's like, all I've drawn is lands, and you're like, well, thank you for giving me that information. Let's Blood Oath. Anyway, Harsh Mentor has a chance to deal, quite a bit of damage. Chandra's Incinerator. X is the total amount of non-combat damage. Right? Chandra's Pyroling. Non-combat damage. This gets +1. Banshee of the Dreadchoir. Myriad. Yeah. It attacks essentially everybody. And that could potentially be a lot of damage for our commander to look at. Vampire's Kiss. Crypt-born Horde. Now this is a beast. Enters the battlefield with X/1/1 counters where X is the total life lost by your opponent's this turn. So not only are we getting bonuses for our commander looking at cards, and Rakdos making stuff cheaper, we got the Crypt-born Horror here. Yeah. We have a Vampire Socialite. I know I just went into it last video or video before. It's a great card. If you're doing red and black things, you might want to read it. Might want to consider it. It's a great card. Pain's Reward. Yeah, bid any amount of life. Those are always fun, right? Emissary of Despair. If you've got that person playing heavy artifacts, this could deal quite a bit of damage to them. So we go to removal. Tragic Slip. Terror. Murder. Echoing Ruin. Now, I know what you're thinking. We play a singleton format. But now, Echoing Ruin, here in the past couple of years, we have clues and treasures and blood tokens and all of these good tokens. Now, this will destroy any artifact. But you could wipe out that player who's been sitting over there on the Smothering Tithe. Yeah. Fire Covenant. Because I said so. That's how much damage. Fireball and Jaya's Immolating Inferno, which is going to bring us to our non-basic lands. We have probably the worst of the bunch of tap lands, the original ones from just the tap, no bonus. Urborg Volcano, Rakdos Guildgate, Command Tower, Evolving Wilds, Cinder Barrens, Rakdos Carnarum, Alchem Refuge, Haunted Ridge, kind of like these new lands, Bloodfell Caves, Terramorphic Expanse, and lastly, our Rogue's Passage. And here again, I do believe I am at 38 lands, which is kind of where I start from. And that is it for Florian. Let's go put Florian on the wall. I think this will finish out a... no, other way. We're getting crooked. There. This is going to finish out a row. So 8:30 is done. 8:30. Wow. That's a lot of decks. Anyway, I do appreciate y'all watching. Y'all let me know what you think. And we're going to go ahead and shuffle and cut.